What's going on YouTube? It's Teej, back again with another video, and today we are redrafting the 2019 NFL Draft Class. Excited to show this video and see how much has changed and how much maybe still stays the same when we look back at this 2019 Draft Class. But leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who should have gone earlier? Who should have fallen later? And then just redoing this draft, where do you think some of these guys might have fallen to versus maybe who are these, second and third round picks and even day 3 picks that you think deserve to sneak into the first round if we got to do it all over again? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Hit the like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content like this. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's have some fun. Now, I do have to say this is going to get off to a little bit maybe of a boring start. I'm going to basically just keep the same first 3 picks as they were. For Arizona, it was Kyler Murray or Josh Rosen. I don't think they're redoing that. And I still see Kyler Murray as a guy who can be your future franchise quarterback and be a guy that, with the right roster around him, you can easily win a Super Bowl with. Now, I know the character stuff's a little problematic right now, but I'm not in the building. I really don't know how true that is. So I'm going to stick with Kyler Murray based off what I can see on the field and what I think is there with his potential and how much of a difference maker we've already seen him be. Let me get to the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think they're changing their minds on this one. I think Nick Bosa, they're more than content with how that worked out with the number 2 pick. And honestly, with how last year played out, I think the same could be said about the Jets and Quinnen Williams. Also, the reason I'm sticking with Quinnen Williams here versus some of the other guys, if you take him off this roster, it looks really, really different. And, this is a insane defensive tackle class. I mean, we got Dexter Lawrence, we got Quinnen Williams, we got Jeffrey Simmons, we got, plenty of other guys that Christian Wilkins that are going to go in the first round in this video. And you could maybe still make an argument this should be Jeff Simmons instead of Quinnen Williams, but I think both teams are content with who they ended up with. I think the Jets are fine with Quinnen Williams. They just paid his brother, extended him, so I think they're content with the idea of extending and keeping Quinnen Williams. And he is coming off a freak year, and all these D tackles in this year's class all have the opportunity, I think, to be like the heir apparent to Aaron Donald as like the perennial best interior defensive lineman year over year. So just a really good defensive tackle class here in 2019. All right, then we get to the Raiders, and this is where I'm going to change things up. From 4th round pick to 4th overall pick, I mean, he's certainly been more productive than that of Clelin Ferrell. Let's go with Max Crosby here. I mean, we just basically keep him on the Raiders, so that's a nice story there. But it's also cool to think about, 4th rounder that becomes the 4th overall pick. And, I like Brian Burns a ton, and Montez Sweat's one of my, more underrated players in the league, in my opinion. And there's some other edge rushers that are really good, but it's kind of hard not to look back at this class and say, yeah, Max Crosby is the best of the bunch. So let's keep him in Vegas, and let's go ahead and right the wrong that was Clelin Ferrell, maybe. Then we get to Tampa Bay. This was Devin White in real life, so I'm like trying to think, is there a linebacker worth taking here? No, this was a solid linebacker class. We'll talk about that the last pick of this video because I do want to talk about it then. But for right now, I'm going to go with Jeff Simmons here. Back and forth in my mind between Simmons and Lawrence, but considering we know Simmons stays healthy, if we could redo this and we knew he was going to get a clean bill of health and not miss a whole lot of time, he goes a lot earlier than 19, as is, because of what he was at Mississippi State. So you pair him up with Vita Vea. Vita Vea is the run-stopping specialist with pass rush upside. Simmons is the pass rusher who's solid against the run. That is one hell of an interior defensive line duo, and Simmons has played like a guy who might replace Aaron Donald as the best interior defensive lineman in football. I think it's worthy of a top 5 pick. We're going to have the New York Giants here on the clock at 6, and I'm basically just going to flip some of these things around with how they ultimately played out. Dexter Lawrence here at 6. We'll come back to Daniel Jones when we get to 17. Little spoiler alert, but I think Giants fans love them some sexy Dexy, and you pair him up with Leonard Williams, some of the other pieces across that defensive line. It's made that unit into a big-time strength of the last few seasons for the Giants, and a big part now that they have a second corner in Deonte Banks from this year's draft class. There's a lot of optimism about this Giants defense. He also signed Bobby Okereke. I'm interested to see where Wink Martindale takes this defense, and Dexter Lawrence a big part of their success that could potentially come their way. Then we get to the Jags, and we're going to see a lot of wide receivers in this video because the wide receiver class, for whatever reason, was just getting criminal hate. A.J. Brown, one of the best wide receivers in football, in that top 10 conversation. I remember at the time, the Jags definitely could have used one more guy. So A.J. Brown, with what we know now, I think they'd be more than happy adding this guy who's great after the catch, great winning deep downfield contested catch spots, solid route runner. You can just do so many different things, and he's a true number 1. Name a situation, name a role for him, and he'll be able to execute and come through in a big spot. That's A.J. Brown. And again, this wide receiver class was insane. So a lot of these guys are going to go in the first round. Then we get to the Lions at 8. This is going to be where I have Christian Wilkins come off the board. Another one of these two tackles that I think is on the verge of maybe becoming the next Aaron Donald-esque type of, dominant interior defensive lineman. And last year was definitely the best year of his career. And, dude, he is a big human being. But it is rare to see dudes that size move as smooth and as fluid and as quick as Christian Wilkins does. I think back to specifically the Christmas Day game against Green Bay, and dude, he was shooting gaps before Packers offensive linemen could come out of their snaps, or their stances rather. He is just a freak athlete, figuring it out as a pass rush. The hand placement has improved a ton, and he's a solid run defender. Yeah, again, one of the best young interior defensive linemen in football. And for the Lions, knowing where they kind of go over the next couple of years, wouldn't be bad to have a superstar there in the middle of that D line. All right, then we get to the Buffalo Bills here at 9, and I kind of hit on this yesterday, but I feel like Terry McLaurin is not ever in these top 10 wide receiver conversations. There's so many names that we could rattle off, and respect. If you don't think Terry McLaurin's top 10, then that's fine. But he should at least be in that conversation more. I used to say the same thing about Tyler Lockett 4 years ago or so, where it's like, dude, he makes the craziest spectacular catches, and he's so reliably, consistently getting open, and he's solid enough after the catch. Why aren't we talking about him in this top 12 maybe conversation, top 15 conversation for Lockett? I think McLaurin's even better, and I think he's worthy of at least being mentioned in that top 10 conversation, at least being an honorable mention for that group. I mean, he wins at all 3 levels, great with the ball in his hands, wasn't really a contested catch guy at Ohio State, but emerged into one because of the QB play he's had to deal with in Washington. He is a jack of all trades wide receiver, and if he was 6'2", 210, I think a lot more people would be putting him consistently in the top 10 conversation. Just has a different body type, and he plays for the Commanders, and that team has not been good. So I think that's another reason why he gets a little overlooked. But hey, man, Buffalo, think about where Terry McLaurin and Stephon Diggs, if that combination still came together, that would be an insane wide receiver tandem there in Buffalo. All right, now to pick number 10. I'm going to give the Denver Broncos Ed Oliver. Just got that contract extension from the Bills. He's coming off the best season of his career. I think things are trending in the right direction here for Oliver. And, not much in the way of being a high-level run defender, and because of that, his snap count's pretty low. The Bills they recognize his weakness. But as a pass rusher, he's really kind of hitting a stride now. Now, granted, after Von Miller got hurt last year, it felt like, okay, this is without a doubt the Ed Oliver breakout season. The first 4 to 6 weeks, I was like, Ed Oliver is about to become a stud interior defensive lineman. We're going to talk about him with Jeff Simmons and Wilkins and Lawrence. He's going to be in that conversation. Then Von Miller gets hurt, and he's just he's good enough the rest of the way. So I want to see what he looks like this year. Can he continue to build upon that success? But he's only just now 25, too. So this makes sense that he's kind of just now hitting his stride. Uber athletic, very quick out of his stance, twitchy first step. Some of the same stuff that made him such an intriguing prospect out of Houston. You see at the NFL level, but also that comes with limitations against the run. And, I just wish he had taken that step forward in becoming a game wrecker. A lot of the other D tackles, Jeffrey Simmons, could be a game wrecker. Christian Wilkins showed that last year. He could be that guy. Dexter Lawrence can be a guy who wrecks an offensive lineman's or an offense's game plan. Ask the Minnesota Vikings. And I just feel like Ed Oliver isn't there yet, which is a little disappointing. But maybe this is the year where he does get to that point. All right, the Cincinnati Bengals here at 11. In real life, they took Jonah Williams, and I kind of hit on this a little bit yesterday too, so I'm kind of giving myself away videos ahead of time. But Elgton Jenkins is, in a lot of ways, just Jonah Williams, but a whole lot better. He's a much better guard. We haven't seen Jonah Williams play a whole lot of guard, but Elgton Jenkins has been one of the best guards in football, so I have a hard time thinking Williams is going to top that. And when we've seen Jenkins play tackle, he's been better than Jonah Williams. So this feels like another swing of the bat, but with hindsight, which one of these guys is going to pan out and be a better player, and Elgton Jenkins is just that. So guard tackle flexibility. In this world, you're probably playing left guard and you're figuring out tackle, but maybe he has the ability to kick out to tackle. And be a starter there at left tackle like Jonah Williams was. But also Jonah Williams missed his entire rookie year, so Elgton Jenkins didn't miss 2019 season. So already feels like Cincy's getting some more value here with the selection of Elgton Jenkins. Green Bay Packers, I'm going to keep this at Rashawn Gary. Where is he at? Okay, D-line. Interesting. There's some other edge rushers I might prefer over Rashawn Gary, but it's just worked out so well for Green Bay where, they drafted and developed this guy with a ton of tools, ton of traits, and it's kind of blossomed one of the best edge rushers in football. So I don't think they would change anything if they had the option to. So let's keep Rashawn Gary there in Green Bay. Next is Miami. This is where I'm going to have a little bit of an edge rusher run. Brian Burns, one of my favorite edge rushers in the NFL. Yeah, he's a little bit, slim maybe, and he's not a great run defender, but when it comes to winning with speed and bend, there are a few that do it better than Brian Burns. And Miami at this time, they could use interior defensive line help. They could also just use true edge help. They were just looking for pass rush boost wherever they could get it. And here, I think they get a really good edge rusher in Brian Burns in this redraft. And if you're going to miss out on Christian Wilkins, not a bad, secondary option to fall your way. All right, sticking on the defensive line, this is where I'm going to have Montez Sweat come off the board. Atlanta, in a bunch of these redrafts, it's easy to give them edge because how many off seasons now we've been saying Atlanta needs another edge rusher. They need a stud edge rusher. They need a guy who's going to get double-digit sacks year in and year out. Montez Sweat, one, a really good run defender right away, has continued to be that. And then pretty good pass rusher right off the jump too, and it's only gotten better and better with time in Washington. So yeah, I definitely think this is a guy who already was in the first round, but if Atlanta got another chance at it, they'd be like, yeah, let's go ahead and take that, because he shores up so many different aspects the Falcons have struggled with from 2019 to where we are in the present. All right, now we get to Washington, and this was the Dwayne Haskins pick. So there's not a lot of their quarterback that I really love here, but wide receiver at the time was a need, and Terry McLaurin's off the board. So let's have some fun and give him DK Metcalf, right? Like, if we're not going to get T-Mac, DK Metcalf's a pretty fun ad too, and maybe you could convince me you should flip these picks, right? And, you know, that argument's fair. I totally get it. And then you keep T-Mac and Washington. Cool. You see how that works out, though. Good football player, just not enough to change the environment around him, I suppose. But DK Metcalf, one of the best wide receivers in football, especially when you consider how limited of a route tree he has, and the fact that he still dominates with that is crazy. I mean, it's a lot of vertical stuff, the comeback off of it, and a slant. And he runs a mean slant, and his size, strength, and speed makes it really tough to keep up with him on goes and even posts off of it as well. So, yeah, just one of the best wide receivers in football. Not much more I need to see there. If you're not going to get Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, really nice, silver medal, so to speak. And then we get to the Carolina Panthers, who took Brian Burns. I'm going to kind of give them the poor man's version of that with Josh Allen, another guy who wins with speed and finesse. His sack totals and hurries have kind of been up and down, kind of correlated to the Jags' success. But I also feel like that's because a lot of the years the Jags were one of the worst defenses in football and just one of the worst teams in football. It was Josh Allen and no one else on that side of the ball. So he was kind of left treading water and doing the best that he could. Now he's starting to get a little bit of help. That defense feels a little bit more well-rounded. And if Trayvon Walker takes a step forward in year 2, I think Josh Allen gets that much better because of it. And we also kind of saw that last year with the impact Arden Key had, freed up Josh Allen a little bit more. So you send him to Carolina, you still need to figure out that second edge rush position. But if you're not going to get, Brian Burns, Josh Allen's a really nice, fallback option for the Carolina Panthers. And as noted earlier, I'm going to give the Giants Daniel Jones. Look, they extended him, and they have a front office and a coaching staff that had really, if they didn't want him, they didn't have to keep. Like, they could have easily been like, hey, you're coming off the best year, you put yourself in a good standing to go into free agency, you put the right foot forward, go get the bag. Best of luck. Thanks for your efforts. And they could have left it at that. But instead, Daboll saw what he could do with them, and with the guarantees, it's really just kind of like a 2-year extension. But, the fact that Daboll even wants to have those 2 years, and the fact that, Joe Schoen is like, yeah, this guy we can build a roster around for the next 2 years. That's intriguing to me. So I'm going to keep him in the first round here, despite the fact that I'm not a huge Daniel Jones guy. But hey, if you're getting an extension worth $40 million a year annually from a front office that I really like and a coach that I really respect, I got to cave in on my thoughts and, kind of cater to those who are smarter than me, like the Brian Dabolls and Joe Schoens of the world. Then we get to the Minnesota Vikings. This was Garrett Bradbury in real life, and that is not going to be the pick here. We are still going to go interior offensive line. Lindstrom, to the best of my knowledge, has not played center at the NFL level. With his movement skills, I wouldn't doubt it, but minimum, this is an upgraded guard. And at this time, the Vikings were looking for legitimately any starter they could find that wasn't a right tackle, basically, because they still had Brian O'Neill, who was a good player, and still is. But they were looking for a starter, left tackle all the way through to right guard. So Lindstrom here, plug and play at right guard. Good scheme fit for that then coaching staff and blocking scheme, and also the current one with Kevin O'Connell. So just kind of good fit all the way around, and just a better player than Garrett Bradbury, especially with where those two guys are at this point in their career. All right, Tennessee Titans. You're not going to get one of the best defensive linemen in Jeffrey Simmons in the league, and you're also not going to get A.J. Brown, which is also a bummer. But if you're not going to get A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, you can do a lot of the same stuff. Now, it may not be quite the same wide receiver, not like the same over-the-top threat that's going to get those 50, 60, contested catch bombs in the end zone like we saw A.J. Brown do, both in Philadelphia and Tennessee. But a lot of the yards after the catch stuff, the quick underneath, slants, get the ball into his hands quick, Deebo Samuel's pretty great at that in San Francisco, and I think he would be a really solid fallback piece here for Tennessee if this board played out the way that it has. Pittsburgh, I'm not doing trades. In real life, they moved up from 20 to 10, but not going to do that here. Cornerback was a need then. It still kind of is a need. Let's give him Byron Murphy. Now Minnesota Viking, a player that I really like. He's had some ups and downs in Arizona, but again, I kind of feel like that's a part of the environment, really. I feel like there were a couple years, like the year that the Cardinals started out 7-0, their last unbeaten team in the NFL. Vance Joseph was, taking one loaf of bread and like one fish and feeding 500 people, like straight out of the Bible stuff. And, that was not going to be something that could maintain. Like that's a tough thing to do. But Byron Murphy was one of the few pieces that gave me confidence that maybe they can get away with it for another week. Maybe this isn't as fluky as I maybe thinking it is. And, last year he starts to play a little bit more outside against DK Metcalf and Devontae Adams, and in my opinion, did an okay job against some of the best wide receivers on football. on the outside, which is impressive. So now we'll really get to see what it looks like in Minnesota, where Brian Flores is going to play a lot of press man. Assuming that he's going to play his style of football, this is going to be a different assignment for Byron Murphy, and we're going to see if he can stick outside. So this is going to be an interesting 2-year period for him in Minnesota. But because of that, 20, this kind of feels like the wrong spot for him. He feels like a guy that's either going to fall out of, this because it doesn't work out in Minnesota, or he looks like a guy who is one of the best up-and-coming young cornerbacks in football. He's only 25, so he can shoot up the board a lot. But we'll have to wait and see with what it looks like in Minnesota. But as a Steelers fan, I'd have been really pumped about this selection. Anyways, let's move on now to the Seattle Seahawks. Gotta shout out Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Fell to the 4th round, and yeah, one of the best steals of the draft for the New Orleans Saints. Seattle at the time could definitely use one more safety, and you get this crazy hybrid player who you can ask him to play a little free, but strong safety to nickel. You can do a ton with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Great coverage, good tackler, just a playmaker, knows for the football, that type. And a big reason why the Eagles defense took a huge step forward when he was healthy last year. I mean, he's just a ball hawk. He's got a nose for turnovers, and I'd love to see what that could have looked like in Seattle. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens at 22. Let's go ahead and give him a wide receiver here. Deontay Johnson went in the 3rd round in real life, but now the Ravens get the chance to steal him away from a division rival. I just got to find him. There he is, 225. Wow, that is insane to look back at. But yeah, Deontay Johnson, I'm not saying he is not the same caliber of wide receiver of DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Terry McLaurin in this class, Deebo Samuel. But the next tier down is not so bad either. Like Jakobi Meyers, I think that's a solid 2. Deontay Johnson, that's a solid 2. Hunter Renfrow, one of the better slot wide receivers in football. There is some talent up and down this wide receiver class. We're past the superstar point, but still, Baltimore has always needed these wide receivers. And now, if I get the chance to be the GM here, I'm just going to give Lamar any and all wide receiver weapons I can, pretty much throughout every redraft. You could have gone Hollywood Brown here. We've already seen what that looks like in Baltimore, so I decided to go in a different direction here with Deontay Johnson. All right, next up we get to the Houston Texans. I'm in Titus Howard in real life. Let's just get him a better pass protector. Jawaan Taylor, kind of like Howard, struggled out of the gates. First 2 seasons really weren't anything worth writing home about. A lot of penalty issues in specific for Taylor. But last year we saw what the potential could be. Still not a great run blocker, but has the upside to be one of the best pass protecting tackles in football. Meanwhile, you look at Titus Howard, and he's kind of getting to a point where he's getting solid. In a world where I can pick between solid and a guy who has the upside to be one of the best pass protectors in football, a tackle, I'm going to take that, so let's give him Jawaan Taylor here at 23. All right, now we get back to the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to give him Draymond Jones, give him another interior presence. It felt like, especially during this time, this was like the peak of it, where it's just nonstop mock drafts, giving interior defensive linemen to the Raiders. They've got to beef up that inside. And in this redraft, they get Draymond Jones, who, first 2 years weren't anything special, but last 2 years in Denver, you really got to see the pass rush upside. Not going to do much against the run, but the Raiders are going to be bad against the run. They're going to have a bunch of penalties. There's some certain Raiders trends that feel like they always stick no matter who the personnel is. But at least here you get a high-end pass rusher there on the inside. You took Max Crosby. You pair him up with Draymond Jones. What could have been maybe one of the best defensive lines in the AFC had this played out the way that it did. At least here in this redraft. Then we get to Philadelphia at 25. This is where I'm going to have Josh Jacobs come off the board. So sorry, he's not going to stick with the Raiders and, Philadelphia. And I was like, this is kind of a tough team to kind of gauge and where their needs are at. And, sometimes I forget about running backs in these redrafts because, I'm not typically someone who's like pounding the table for them to go in the first round. But, Josh Jacobs is coming off a career year and got the franchise tag for good reason. He was arguably the best running back in football last year. So I want to give him his flowers, want to give him his due. And great vision, pretty good pass catcher, solid blend of long speed, but power and elusiveness. I mean, he's just kind of the jack of all trades. And if you give him a solid offensive line, he can do a lot of big things with it. And this was the same draft class where the Eagles drafted Miles Sanders. And I think Josh Jacobs is a better player than Miles Sanders. Now, price tags this year are a little different. Jacobs making more than 10 mil. Sanders making 6.75. But, that point aside, I'll take Jacobs in the backfield over Miles Sanders. Then we get to the Colts here at 26. They actually traded back in real life, but here we're going to have him stick in the first round. We'll give him Marquise Hollywood Brown. This was the class where they took Paris Campbell. And I feel like Hollywood Brown's just a better version of that. And also, Hollywood Brown's had injuries, but nowhere near the extent of Paris Campbell. So you get the big play threat, you get the underneath weapon who can do a lot with the ball in his hands, kind of that exact same build as Paris Campbell, just a better version of it here with Hollywood Brown at 26. All right, now back to the Vegas Raiders. I'm going to go Jamel Dean here. This was a corner class that didn't have a whole lot of guys I wanted to get in the first round, made sure that I got in the first round. But maybe Sean Murphy Bunting, but it was kind of a hot start that first year and then kind of steadily declined. I actually think Jamel Dean's been the better of those, Bucs cornerbacks that come out of this draft class. So take him here at 27. when he's been on the field, he's been a really good player, good size, good athleticism, and been playing a lot of zone. But I also think he's got those traits to be become a solid man coverage corner, as something buzzes past my face. But I just think he's got those traits of becoming just a solid across the board cornerback. So glad to see Tampa Bay both able to keep him this offseason, but also Carlton Davis last season, because those two guys feel like they just created perfect tandem, and you get so much flexibility with what their skill sets present. Then we get to the Chargers at 28, and spoiler alert, this is not going to be Jerry Tillery. I can guarantee that one. We are going to go interior defensive line with Zach Allen. Again, it just feels like you're drafting a player at the same position, just a better version of it. Zach Allen, especially last year, him coming out of Boston College, 3rd round pick, I was like, he's kind of like a poor man's J.J. Watt, and that was, a comp that a lot of people threw out. And, last year you kind of saw that with him playing next to J.J. Watt in specific. But, J.J. Watt last year in Arizona, and, Zach Allen really started to kick into high gear, solid run defender, really picked it up as a pass rusher. Now we get to see what he looks like in Denver as the Draymond Jones replacement. So could be a guy trending in the right direction, therefore a guy who could go a lot higher the next time we do this 2019 redraft. But for the time being, if you're a Chargers fan, this would be an awesome swap out, because Jerry Tillery has given you next to nothing, which pains me to say as a Notre Dame fan. All right, then we get to Seattle at 29. And this was LJ Collier in real life. So, yeah, that's actually really interesting to kind of look back at and to ponder on. But I'm going to go Jakobi Meyers here. Just because, wide receiver, they ended up going with DK Metcalf. So it was a need at the time, and I'm not going to go JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Now I just got to remember where they had Jakobi Meyers on this. And also thought about Hunter Renfrow, but I'll go with the guy who can play on the outside. Meyers also done a ton on the slot, but I think this year we're going to get to see Meyers do a lot more out wide in Vegas. So, you don't get DK Metcalf, but we're going to draft these next run of wide receivers. Again, Deontay Johnson, Hollywood Brown. All these guys feel a little bit better as a wide receiver 2 versus the first few names we talked about, bona fide number 1 wide receivers. But, you play with the cards you're dealt. Obviously, DK Metcalf's not going to fall in your lap in the second round anymore, let alone the last pick of the second round. So take advantage of it. You get Jakobi Meyers. Different skill sets. They win in different ways, but you still get that size. You still get a solid blocker. Can play inside, can play out. So, yeah, solid secondary, silver medal there for the Seattle Seahawks. Then we get to the Green Bay Packers once again. I'm going to go TJ Hawkinson. Now, granted, it's a pass catcher in the first round, so would Gutekunst do it? Probably not, but I'm in control here in this mock draft, this redraft, I should say. So we'll give him TJ Hawkinson. I think he's been a solid player. Tight ends, they're just tough because a lot of them don't perform year one. I actually think the 2023 draft class might change that narrative a little bit. But even Hawkinson, drafting the top 8, a little slow his rookie year. Maybe if he goes to Green Bay and plays with Aaron Rodgers instead, you get a little bit more out of him, but solid blocker, I think that's something that they would have coveted at the time. And if he falls to you at 30, it's a lot different conversation considering where we know he ended up going in real life at pick number 8. All right, 2 more selections, and we're starting to get down towards the bottom of this, and there was a lot of names I left off. So, obviously, not going to get Dwayne Haskins in here, but Jonah Williams, I still thought about it because I think he can be an okay player, and we're starting to run a little light on offensive line help. But I'm going to go to the safety room here. This could have been Darnell Savage, another player that I'd like a good bit, even though I know he's been a little up and down. But Juan Thornhill is a pretty underrated guy, in my opinion. Really good in coverage, solid tackler. May not be the hardest hitter, but if he gets his hands on you, you're more than likely going down. So I just like the assuredness, right? Like Juan Thornhill, I'm not saying has like the splash plays of a Tyrann Mathieu or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or that type of game-changing impact. But man, he just does his job and he does it really, really well, especially as an over-the-top coverage-based free safety. And I think Jim Schwartz and that defense in Cleveland are going to benefit from that. So yeah, I think he's worthy of being in the first-round conversation. And had he been in Kansas City and had a role where he was playing more than maybe 600-ish snaps a year, and like Kansas City just said, hey, him and Tyrann Mathieu need to be playing every single snap. Forget about Daniel Sorensen. Those are our best safeties. They need to be on the field even more. He would have a little bit more, love maybe behind his name. And then we get to the New England Patriots. So to kind of round out some of the names I thought about, maybe Eric McCoy and some of these other interior offensive linemen, maybe Connor McGovern. And then, defensive line. Nobody really here. Who was the other person? Cleveland Ferrell, maybe. I'm trying to find the other person I was looking at here. Yeah, I think that name might have just been Hunter Renfrow. It's kind of escaping me right now. But, Renfrow, they still had Julian Edelman at the time, but it was Edelman towards the end of his career. So maybe you could have gone Renfrow and got the next version of that Wes Walker Edelman type. But instead, I want to give some love here to the linebacker class because, TJ Edwards, really solid player. And he's good. I'm not taking him in the first round per se, but he's been a really solid player at the NFL level. Jermaine Pratt, a lot of the same stuff can be said. I think Pratt's a little bit better than Edwards. And then you get Devin Bush, who was top 10 pick, and Devin White, who was taken in the top 5. So I want to shout out all those guys because maybe you can tell me there's still upside with Devin White, and he's a boomer bust prospect, so he should go here. Bobby Okereke is now making $10 million a year with the New York Giants, so maybe he should have been in consideration. But I'm going to go with one half of the best linebacker tandem in football. I'm going to go Dre Greenlaw. A little undersized. I don't know if he's necessarily a Bill Belichick type of linebacker because he's, 6 foot 230. But nevertheless, you can't argue with the results and the production on the field. Like I said, him and Fred Warner have formed one of the best, if not the best, linebacker tandem in football. So worthy of going somewhere in the first round. But I do want to shout out some of those linebackers because it was a position I know I neglected throughout this video. But guys, let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think of this redraft as I scroll through and let you see each and every pick one more time? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who should have gone higher? Who should have gone lower? And maybe who didn't I put in the first round that you think should have been in the top 32 of this redraft? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Of course, also, who's your favorite team? And shout out the selection that I gave your squad, whether you liked it, loved it, or somewhere there in between. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button. It would help me out a ton if you guys enjoyed today's video and could hit that like button. If you're new around here, want to see more football content like this, enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button as well. But that is going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.